Hello, how are you? My name is Aisha, and today I'd like to speak to you guys about voting rights pertaining to African Americans. So, today we're going to stay in the 1960s. If you know anything about history, in 1869, Congress passed the 15th Amendment, giving African American men the right to vote. And then they did everything to take that back. So we're not going to be speaking about that for all you historians out there that want to say, well, what about the actual history starting back? No, no, no. We're going to talk about what's going on in our time. I'm not saying that that's not important, but I would like to speak about the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So here we go. I got this article from history.com. It was updated January 26, 2021. So here we go. The Voting Rights Act of 1965, signed into law by President Lyndon B. Johnson, aimed to overcome legal barriers at the state and local levels that prevented African Americans from exercising their right to vote as guaranteed under the 15th Amendment to the United States Constitution. The Voting Rights Act is considered one of the most far-reaching pieces of civil rights legislation in U.S. history. So if you guys, just a quick thing, if this is blurry to you, every time I upload one of these videos, when I'm reading from an article, they are blurry. When I make the video, they're not blurry. When I upload it to YouTube, they're blurry. So that was just a quick disclaimer. So, Selma to Montgomery March. Lyndon B. Johnson assumed the presidency in November 1963 upon the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. In the presidential race of 1964, Johnson was officially elected in a landslide victory and used this mandate to push for legislation he believed would improve the American way of life, such as stronger voting rights laws. After the Civil War, the 15th Amendment, ratified in 1870, prohibited states from denying a male citizen to the right to vote based on race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Nevertheless, in the ensuing decades, various discriminatory practices were used to prevent African Americans, particularly those in the South, from exercising their right to vote. During the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 1960s, voting rights activists in the South were subjected to various forms of mistreatment and violence. One event that outraged many Americans occurred on March 7, 1965, when peaceful participants in the Selma to Montgomery March for voting rights were met by Alabama state troopers who attacked them with nightsticks, tear gas, and whips after they refused to turn back. So this was happening in your country less than 60 years ago. All these people wanted to do was vote, and they were met with violence, because that's what America knows how to do, is be violent towards people that just want freedom. Some protesters were severely beaten and bloodied, and others ran for their lives. The incident was captured on national television. Hey, kind of like the Black Lives Matter movement. I don't agree with the movement, but I do agree Black Lives Matter. It's obvious that Black lives don't matter in America, because why would we need to say it? Why would they need to march in 1965 for voting? And why would we need to march right now for saying, could you please just stop killing us just a little bit, just a little bit. In the wake of the shocking incident, Johnson called for comprehensive voting rights legislation. In a speech to a joint session of Congress on March 15th, 1965, the president outlined the devious ways in which election officials denied African American citizens the vote. Literacy test. Black people attempting to vote often were told by election officials that they had gotten the date, time, or polling places wrong, that they possessed insufficient literacy skills, or that they had filled out an application incorrectly. Black people whose population suffered a high rate of illiteracy due to centuries of oppression and poverty often would be forced to take literacy tests, which they sometimes failed. Johnson also told Congress that voting officials, primarily in southern states, had been known to force Black voters to recite the entire Constitution or explain the most complex provisions of state laws, a task most white voters would have been hard-pressed to accomplish. In some cases, even Black people with college degrees were turned away from the polls. Hey, that kind of reminds me of how they have these phony ass tests for you to be able to come into the United States from another country. Think about it. Most Americans don't know the laws and the constitutional amendments. Most Americans don't know shit about this country. So the average American wouldn't even be let into their own country if you think about it. These are the games these people play. Voting Rights Act signed into law. The Voting Rights Bill was passed in the Senate by a 77-19 vote on May 26, 1965. After debating the bill for more than a month, the U.S. House of Representatives passed the bill by a vote of 333 to 85 on July 9th. Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act into law on August 6, 1965, with Martin Luther King Jr. and other civil rights leaders present at the ceremony. The act banned the use of literacy tests, provided for federal oversight of voter registration in areas where less than 50% of the non-white population had not registered to vote, and authorized the U.S. Attorney General to investigate the use of poll taxes in state and local elections. In 1964, the 24th Amendment made poll taxes illegal in federal elections. Poll taxes in state elections were banned in 1966 by the U.S. Supreme Court. Did you know in 1965, at the time of the passage of the Voting Rights Act, there were 6 African American members of the U.S. House of Representatives and no Black people in the U.S. Senate. By 1971, there were 13 members of the House and 1 Black member of the state. I don't know why they're telling us that. That doesn't make people feel good. That just shows how fucked up this country truly is. If we were a country that really cared about everyone, and I'm not excluding anyone right now, I'm talking about anyone that you could freaking think of, then that means Congress will be filled with every color you could freaking think of, okay? Every nationality, whatever you want to call it, okay? It would not just be fucking hundreds of freaking white people and then 2 or 3 or 17 people of color, okay? That's bullshit. All these people want to do is try to make you feel good off of things that they made you feel bad about a few hundred years ago. That should not change you. That should not move you. That should not do nothing to you. It should not excite you that people didn't give you something and then they decide to have a change of heart, or maybe they were pestered and now they decide to change their mind. That should not move you. I'm sorry. And if it does, you got a lot of fucking learning to do. I'm sorry. Frustration. Voter turnout rises in the South. Although the Voting Rights Act passed, local or state and local enforcement of the law was weak, and it often was ignored outright, mainly in the South and in areas where the proportion of Black people in the population was high, and their vote threatened the political status quo. Still, the Voting Rights Act gave African American voters the legal means to challenge voting restrictions and vastly improved voter turnout. In Mississippi alone, voter turnout among Black people increased from 6% in 1964 to 59% in 1969. Since its passage, the Voting Rights Act has been amended to include such features as the protection of voting rights for non-English speaking American citizens. That don't move me either. I don't really care. Okay, so here's my thing. Here's a little rant on the election. I could be totally wrong. I could be in my feelings just because of all the bullshit that's been happening in America. But here's my feelings on the last election. If I'm wrong, I don't really give a shit. This is just my feelings. The only reason why they say voter fraud is because African Americans overwhelmingly came out to vote against that son of a bitch, Trump, okay? The United States does not give a flying fuck about people cheating to get to the top. The United States could care less if they're cheating as long as someone's benefiting out of it. So why the fuck is everybody all up in arms because they believe someone cheated this time around? I truly believe they feel that African Americans, or people of color, as they say, are rising up, finally standing up for what they think is right, or just their rights in general. And people don't like that shit. So instead of saying, you know what, we lost, even if it was cheating, because America don't give a fuck about cheating. Get out of here. You're mad that African Americans and people that you feel and deem less desirable are now able to vote. They can speak their mind. They have the upper hand in some certain places or certain aspects of life. You're pissed off because now you're not the only one that gets to speak. That's my feelings on the last vote, because America does not care about cheating. America has no qualms about cheating. America was started on cheating. So think about that. Like it, love it, don't like it, I don't give a shit. That's America for you. This has been a video on the lying, cheating corporation that is America. Here goes some pictures for you of some dirty Americans getting down the only way they know how. I do appreciate you guys watching. I hope you learn something every time. I know it seems like it's anger, but no, this is just a long time coming of the truth coming out. If you don't like the truth, stay under your rock. If you do, come on out and listen. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Bye.